Franz Kafka, From Chaos to Entropy, A Journey Through the Absurd. Kafka was born in 1883 in Austro-Hungarian Czechoslovakia in Prague. At this point in time, Austria-Hungary was a predominantly Catholic empire. The Kafka family were German-speaking secular Jews. Franz's father, Hermann, bullied and abased his son. Their relationship was always strained and shaped Franz's life in many ways. Kafka was engaged twice, but his inability to conduct a successful relationship with a woman may indicate that he was a closeted homosexual, a psychosis-inducing condition. Before Kafka died of tuberculosis in 1924, age 41, he asked his best friend, Max Brod, to destroy all of his work. Max did not, making him something of a literary hero. Kafka was born into a well-established, powerful empire. However, during this time, tensions were rising among the European powers, owing mostly to secret alliances, but also to ethnic tension. This agitation led to the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and the onset of World War I. Between World Wars I and II, empires were built and broken, and many borders were moved. A time of political darkness had descended on Europe. Toward the end of his life, Kafka could sense the oncoming Nazi apocalypse because of increasing ethnic and racial tensions, and, in fact, his sisters died in concentration camps. Kafka's most avid biographer, Saul Friedlander, is a fellow Czech who also lost family to the furnaces. Kafka's work shows influences from other literary movements before and during his lifetime. The Victorians liked to depict romance within the harsh social structure of Victorian England. The naturalists liked to depict nature red in tooth and claw. And the realists look at the reality of life, good, bad, and indifferent. Kafka's reality was also bizarre, arbitrary, and confusing. The Metamorphosis is a tale of a traveling salesman, Gregor Samsa, who awakes one morning to find himself transformed into a horrible vermin, a giant insect. This transformation concerns him less than its effect on his ability to work and support his family, who are spoiled and lazy, unable to support themselves or pay their debt to Gregor's employer. Gregor was a successful salesman and had even been planning to send his sister to the conservatory. Gregor is unable to communicate with his insect voice, but he understands everything that is going on. He still understands human speech. Over time, Gregor's family finds work and other means of income, taking on boarders. Gregor is increasingly isolated, and even his sister, who feeds and cleans up after him, comes to believe they would all be better off if Gregor were gone. Everyone is horrified and repulsed by Gregor. In the end, Gregor dies alone and blind, a months-old apple his father threw at him, festering in his exoskeleton. The household breathes a sigh of relief. If one examines Gregor's psychological disposition, one will also gain an understanding of Kafka's inner conflict. As a traveling salesman, beholden to the company and acutely aware of his obligations, Gregor finds himself scurrying here and there in a mindless fashion, like an insect. He finds his ego subsumed to such a degree that he actually becomes the insect he feels like. His id is completely transformed as well, no longer attracted to his former favorites, like the sweet milk and bread his sister brings him to eat. Unfortunately, Gregor's superego is entirely intact and human. Because he cannot communicate with other humans, he is trapped and tortured in his own mind. Kafka, having done his own stint as a traveling salesman, was also a virtual slave to his job at the insurance company. The work was anything but stimulating, and the environment was dull, regimented, and dehumanizing. Although he also blamed himself for his failures, Kafka frequently pointed to his job as a stumbling block to his ability to finish his novels. Kafka had an odd ego. At times he blamed everything and everyone around him for holding him back from greatness. At other times he despaired and disparaged himself, as if neither explanation could alleviate his pain. The id, as Freud describes it, is the virtual repository of all base human drives and desires. It is controlled by the egos. In Kafka's case, it is likely that his ego was so large because it had to be strong to suppress his id. If he was indeed a closeted homosexual, Kafka would not only have had to suppress his libido, his sex drive, but also work hard to keep up appearances, like sincerely attempting to have a successful heterosexual relationship. Kafka's superego, the unconscious repository of judgment of self and others, was surely in a continuous state of war with his id and his ego as he swung manically back and forth between sources to blame for his circumstances. Furthermore, Kafka suffered greatly from his father's abusive treatment. Gay or straight, trying to love or hate an abusive parent is a challenge. For Kafka, these circumstances would have made an issue of normal Oedipal progress. Instead of finding himself attracted to his mother, by all accounts a lovely woman, Kafka would have had feelings for his father which were difficult to reconcile with his feelings of hatred regarding his father's treatment of him. In The Metamorphosis, readers detect a similar relationship between Gregor and his father. While Gregor was supporting the family and paying their debt, Gregor's father was content to sit back and read the papers. But as soon as Gregor could no longer serve, his father began to treat him like an insect. Finally, an examination of Jungian archetypes provides further insight. Gregor is the hero, a Jungian archetype, who undertakes a physical and spiritual journey on a quest of becoming. His body changes as a result of unconscious emotional examination. After his transformation, Gregor is trapped in his mind with nothing to do but consider his circumstances and ask why. Unfortunately, the answers Gregor finds reinforce his physical status. Gregor cannot live with this, and so he dies. Kafka was the hero of his own life. His life was his journey of becoming. Sadly, it seems he found no more true peace of mind than Gregor Samsa did before he succumbed to tuberculosis. Kafka remains relevant today. Kafkaesque is a word coined to describe events in which an impossible bureaucracy, acting under complex and arbitrary rules, makes it impossible for a reasonable people to negotiate the circumstances in any rational, logical way. The trial is Kafka's best example of this and is still cited in legal decisions where defendants are set chasing their tails, unable to resolve their legal issues due to conflicting procedures and the like. For example, one such reported circumstance involved the death of a child. The other children were removed from the home pending the investigation of their sibling's death. The mother was unable to acquire any action regarding their disposition because of the ongoing investigation, but she also could not do anything to move the investigation forward because she was not allowed to have paperwork regarding the dead child's case because the sibling's case had not been settled. Other similar terms for this phenomenon include hamstrung and catch-22, although Kafkaesque adds an element of the absurd beyond what other authors had offered when Kafka began publishing. Questions. How might it have affected Kafka to grow up a Jew surrounded by Catholics, a German speaker among Czech speakers? This is a question of diversity and how people fit in. Number 2. In literary terms, Kafka was a realist. Where can you find the influence of the Victorians and the naturalists in his work? Where do you see the rigid social structure and the nature that impacts his characters in his works? Number 3. Where in the world today do we find people so oppressed by their work that they snap or die? Why do you suppose this still happens? Have you ever felt like dropping out of the fight? How did you overcome it? Number 4. Have you ever found yourself fighting a Kafkaesque circumstance? How did it make you feel? Summarize a Kafkaesque situation. For example, Black Friday shopping is Kafkaesque because... Or, from history, at one time one might acquire a stamp to grow marijuana. However, In order to acquire the stamp, one must present the product, which was illegal to own without the stamp. Thus, one was arrested trying to obey the law. Thank you very much for attending my presentation on Franz Kafka. If there are further questions, please post them to the forum and I will try to respond as soon as possible. Thank you very much.